I would change every detail of those losses, but I'm grateful for what I learned in them, because at the end of that, I said, God, where else would I go? I'm not going to leave you. There's nowhere else to go. And so just having that decision already made, and just choosing to fight to believe in his goodness.
Tatum and Annie, welcome to Focus on the Family.
Thank you, Jim. Such an honor to be here.
It's good to have you. It's a heavy subject, as the YouTube watchers and the listeners on podcast and radio take this in. It is kind of sit back and absorb this. Most people hit tragedy of some sort, whether it was years ago or ahead of them. And so this is one of those programs that just prepares a person for that moment, whether it's the loss of your parents, which it'll happen, or the loss of a sibling or the loss of a child. Let me ask you, you do come from a close-knit family. That's awesome. I'd love to spend a half hour talking to you about that. But tell me about your family and about your special boy, Sam, and how he came into your life.
I'll do our nuclear family.
Yeah.
We grew up in Georgia. Parents are still married. They're awesome. We grew up in church. I'm the oldest, clearly. Tatum is about 15 months younger than me. And then we have another sister about 7 years younger than Tatum.
About 15 months?
Yeah,
You're such a firstborn. Very exacting.
And then my parents also help take care of some of my cousins. So when we do family things, there's a lot more of us, and that all kind of operate. We call it cousin siblings. We all kind of operate as one big crew. And Tatum is married to Jacob. And so I'll let you take it from there, Tatum, talking about Sam and TJ.
Yeah. So Jacob and I got married. We were in our mid-30s, which, in the Christian world is like grandparents.
Well,
sometimes.
But it's more normal now.
It is getting more and more normal. Yeah.
Young people to marry a little later.
Yeah. And so we were hoping to start a family pretty soon. And it turned out that was really hard for us. We had 4 miscarriages in our first 3 years of marriage. And we also had a failed IVF. So after all of that heartbreaking loss, I found out I was pregnant with our boy, Sam, and he is, like you said, he's our miracle boy. And
that went well, and he was healthy.
Like textbook perfect.
Let me ask you this, and we're going to talk about your other pregnancy with TJ in a moment, and that was more complicated. But I want to ask this here, which is kind of the grief of all that, with the 4 children you lost. We've had women and their husbands sit with us and talk about just that experience, the loss, the miscarriage of a child, and how we often will disregard that. Well, it didn't happen, and you just need to get moving and try again, or whatever it might be. But to go through that 4 times, I can't imagine, did you have that discussion with the Lord? Like, Lord, seriously, 4 times? How do I have faith in you that this 5th pregnancy is actually going to end in a positive way?
Yeah.
Did you have that chat?
It was, I had a lot of chats with the Lord in that season.
Is it okay to have that chat with the Lord?
And that's actually one of the things that I feel like these losses have taught me, is that it's not only okay, but it's good and right to have that chat with the Lord. Yeah, it's healthy. I mean, it's like with your spouse, you would never want to just shut down and not have those conversations of things that are challenging for you. And if we want to be like in an intimate relationship with the Lord, then we need to have those real conversations with him. Yeah. And honestly, like I wish I could change our story. I would change every detail of those losses, but I'm grateful for what I learned in them. And in one specific loss, our second loss, I was 14 weeks pregnant and I delivered our daughter. And in that one, it was really, really hard. And I kind of like went toe to toe with the Lord about that. And I'm so grateful for that, because at the end of that, I said, God, where else would I go? I'm not going to leave you. There's nowhere else to go. And so just having that decision already made.
Yeah.
And just choosing to fight to believe in his goodness.
Yeah. I mean, it's so critical. And I think spiritually the thing is getting to the place where your circumstances do not dictate your faith, your joy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be too flippant with that. This is probably the most serious moment that you could experience, is the loss of a child, a miscarriage. And we'll talk about TJ, who was born.
Yeah.
But how do you get to that place where you can honestly say, Lord, I'm with you? My circumstances won't dictate my trust in you, my faith in you.
I'm not sure it's a door that closes behind you. I'm not sure it's a place you get to and then you only move forward from there.
Yeah.
For me, it is also that, okay, in this mountain, the Lord and I got to the top and we both survived it. And there will be another valley. And so for me, it has more been, okay, I know that is true. And when that question comes to me again, I've gone to a new place. So it's a new height. But I think it would be hard for me to think, oh, good, I should never question that again. I've gone beyond questioning that again. And so I think there's a lot of permission to go, yeah, that is going to come up again in a new loss and a new pain and a new grief. But he was faithful last time.
Tatum, let's move to TJ. You were several weeks into your pregnancy and you got some devastating news. Tell us about the diagnosis and what the doctors were saying.
Yeah, so at 12 weeks, we did the more genetic testing because it's actually super common now. I think most pregnancies do it. But the markers came back as really concerning for trisomy 18, which is what they call life-limiting diagnosis. There are some few exceptions, some rare cases that can survive, but the vast majority don't survive. A lot don't survive to birth. And then after that, most of the children with trisomy 18 pass away before their first birthday. And because I had already been in the world of miscarriage and loss, I knew what a trisomy 18 diagnosis meant. Yeah. And so it was just absolutely devastating.
And again, the emotion of this, just to recap that, I mean, you had 4 miscarriages. Sam's pregnancy is healthy and everything was normal and not at risk. No. And then you get pregnant with TJ and you're back to kind of this dark analysis or diagnosis.
Right.
How did you manage?
We were out of the woods.
How did you, I'm sure you were buoyant expecting Sam.
Yeah.
This will go well.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't. So that's like a double whammy.
Yeah. Like a whiplash.
Yeah, like a whiplash. How did you manage that now?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think that, my emotional state during that pregnancy was really hard so I think that at that point it was easy to just focus on TJ and what was going on because it was so big. But it's also interesting that after his death, the different layers of grief that I've experienced of the miscarriages, especially of our daughter at 14 weeks, because we know she was genetically perfect.
So that all bubbled back.
Yeah. Wow. So, and new layers of it, right? Like we had this baby girl who was genetically perfect. We know my body can carry a pregnancy. What happened?
Yeah.
And so it's been really interesting. That's a weird word to use for it. I mean, devastating, but interesting to see how new layers of grief over the miscarriages have come in the light of a healthy Sam and a very sick TJ.
Let me ask you a delicate question because, people that get that diagnosis, certainly the physicians, I'm sure, were saying, in part to protect you emotionally, they would think. But I totally agree with this outcome that you came to, which is, no, we're going to have this child. It'll live the number of days God has ordained for that child to live. A lot of women and their husbands would not do that. Just tell me about the conviction of that.
Yeah, I'll say that it was really challenging in those spaces.
Yeah.
Because even as someone who has a value for life and has a great community and grew up in the church, and me and my husband were obviously committed to our children. And there is this darkness of that is even hard to combat as a person of mature faith, that it felt like I had to tell myself, I am not wasting medical resources on my son, which was, I had to tell myself that over and over again, which even now is heartbreaking to think. Yeah. But the doctors do think they're helping you.
Yeah.
They think it's the most gracious, merciful thing.
And that was probably a recommendation they gave.
Yeah, we very early in the conversation said that wasn't an option for us. But it has given me a lot more compassion and understanding that I didn't have previously for women in this situation, and especially women who don't have, our family showed up for me. and our community, our church community, I've never experienced being carried the way that we were. And I have often thought how fortunate we were to have all of that. And I don't know how women do it if they don't have that, if they don't have an excellent spouse who is there to support them and serve them.
Think of that all alone woman who doesn't even have her boyfriend or her husband supporting her.
It is just devastating to think of.
Yeah.
And so it was, I mean, like it was never an option for us.
Yeah.
But it was very, it was a hard space to navigate.
Do you think going through that, having TJ and then holding TJ at least for how many months?
56 days.
56 days. Yeah. In the end, and again, you may not be able to measure this, but with the miscarriages, it might inform you. Did that experience of being able to hold him for 56 days, to be his mom outside the womb for 56 days, did it help emotionally? I mean, that's a tough question.
It's a tough question. Do you know, I am so grateful, even like we didn't think we would get even close to that amount of time with him. Yeah. And, as a parent, the day a baby comes out, they kind of look crazy, right? Like even just his sweet little face, by the time he passed away at 2 months, he had grown, and his face had changed. And so I am eternally grateful that we got that time with him, that I got to see him. I feel like there's a lot I know him, like totally. his eyes were so deep. I can tell you things that he liked.
His features.
Yeah. And his little angry knees. When he would get mad, he would stick his legs out like this. And we called him his angry knees. And and he had eyebrows that did a lot of work. And
it's important for couples to know that. Because I think it informs that decision.
Yeah, totally. And I will say, though, it was, I am grateful and I would not change our choice. And it was the hardest season of my life by far.
Yeah, they were 3 weeks in the NICU, and then TJ was at Tatum and Jacob's home in hospice care for 5 weeks with 24/7 care.
Yeah.
So it was
us being the 24/7 care.
Yeah.
With a 2-year-old.
It was a really,
I was going to ask Sam. It was
really,
2.
Really challenging season for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, allow me to interrupt for just a moment here to say how much we appreciate you watching. Now, if you find value in this content, subscribe by clicking below. It'll be a big help to us. Let's go ahead and return to the show.
Annie, let me pull you in here. You're the older sister. You're seeing all this happen. You guys are tight-knit, as you said at the top of the program. What were you going through, watching your sister and her husband struggle in all this?
Yeah, I mean, we had in a different way experienced the 4 miscarriages as well, right? The exciting announcement, the telling your family, and then having to retell your family like she and Jacob had to do. And so with TJ, we got this opportunity, and I use that phrase, and I know it's going to sound strange, but very rarely do you get this opportunity to prepare to grieve and hope that God will do something different. Yeah. So from week 12 on, it was, man, this is terrible. And what could God do? And how could God change the story?
And what can't God do?
Yeah. And so it was very like, we are available. Even when he was born, he came out healthier than they expected. And so then it was like, okay, what's going on here? Is this a slow miracle? He only had, Tatum's posted pictures of this at this point. So he only had one full arm. So I called him Nemo, because Nemo had that little fin. Yeah. So I said, just keep swimming. And even in his birth and in the first day of his life, it was kind of like, okay, God, maybe you're actually telling a different story here than we thought. And so, because when I wrote the story for Sam, when I wrote Where Did TJ Go, we thought TJ wouldn't leave the hospital. And so for the family, it was the same, like, oh, TJ's here. He's breathing.
Connecting.
Yes. And
Emotions.
This is okay. Yes. Yeah. And so what happens next? Yeah. And so our job, as Tatum said, the family, what we got to do as best we could was just come around, and me and our other sister Sally ran Camp Sally Annie for Sam, while Tatum and Jacob were at the NICU with TJ, and I bought an inflatable pool. Y'all can imagine. Y'all know me and my fun.
Great older sister.
I'm like, what do we need? What does Sam need to have the best time as a 2-year-old?
Yeah. Annie said, I don't know how you do this every day. I was like, I don't do this every day.
We were like chalk, pool, food, whatever. And so so that was how we spent our time. Is how can we take care of Sam and support Sam? And then once Tatum and Jacob were home and it was clear that TJ would not live much longer, it was, okay, we need nurses, we need food, friends want to do things. And so we were able to be around them and help with that. And also that meant we got to be around TJ too.
Annie ran my life.
Yeah.
She ran my calendar.
Well, she is your older sister.
She ran my mail, the meal train. She ran the caring bridge. She
That's so
found
awesome.
nurses. She literally made it possible for me to focus on TJ.
Yeah, that's so good.
Such a gift.
So good.
You've touched on this already, and it's such a biblical concept that life isn't just one or the other. It's both. It's kind of both and. And you mentioned it, Tatum, and then Annie, you captured it in the book, this combination of joy and grief simultaneously. So would you share just a little bit, Tatum, about what that looked like? And then I'd love to hear about like the whale, because that's really instructive, I think.
Yeah, actually my therapist and I talk about this a lot because it is very complicated as a human to hold both grief and joy and grief and trust and pain and joy, But it's like seemingly easier to shut one down and be all in the other. So it is very complicated, and it actually takes a lot of energy to hold both the grief and joy. And I just feel like every day I'm learning what that looks like, that it looks different in each moment, different in each day. And
different personalities handle it. Some personalities lean toward, I can sit in this grief. We experienced this for Tatum and Jacob, as there were friends who would come over and they could sit with Tatum in her sadness. They could really be there and listen. I am not built that way. And what I used to think is, man, I'm just not as mature as some of my friends because I can't sit in sadness for 3 hours with my sister while she's grieving. But actually, it's really important to have the people in your lives who lean the other way that can come over and go, I'm going to clean the bathroom. I've got Taco Bell on the way, and I'm going to take Sam, and we're going to go play outside. We need those people too. But what is healthiest is when you can hold both. And the example I give is when whales have to go to the surface, but they're also going to go to the deep. And the healthier we get, the more we are able to do both as well. Let yourself get down into the feelings. I need to sit with my family and sit with Sam and Tatum and our parents and their grief.
And I need to sit with my own grief.
Yes, totally. And then also come up and go, we can also laugh. We can also get everybody around the table and have a great meal. TJ was in Tatum and Jacob's house, like I said, for 5 weeks. And we laughed a lot around his oxygen machine and around him and his little bassinet with all the tubes on him. There was a lot of time when our family was in that room and Sam was running around like a wild 2-year-old with our other cousins, Green and Hallie. And it was really fun. I know that sounds crazy, but it was really fun because it was us all together. We have a really sweet family picture that is the only one that will ever exist because TJ's in it.
Yeah.
And it is, and so we can hold both of those. So we need to remind ourselves, be a whale, be a whale. I have the emotional maturity to go into the depths of this pain. I also have the emotional maturity to know that isn't the only feeling I need to have. I'm allowed to come up for relief.
And get oxygen.
And
that's
breathe.
Good. With that, speaking for both of you in that regard, how do you describe this idea that the experience of grief makes you a better believer? Is that a fair statement?
Yes. I would have
Sounds
never
cruel.
described myself as empathetic before.
Nor would I have described her as empathetic before.
That is fair. That is fair.
Okay.
It's genuinely fair.
But it's an
It's
outcome.
huge. And to be able to see and empathize with people's pain, I would say is central to being a believer and being the hands and feet of Christ. Yeah. So if you're in ministry or not, but it is our job because we are in ministry. And so I think it has made me a lot more understanding and empathetic. And I also tend to be very black and white by nature. And loss and grief has brought a lot of gray, a lot of nuance that I think I'm willing to sit with people in and navigate with them that I wasn't before.
Interesting. So that makes you a better person, you believe?
I think so.
Yeah, it's your experience. So.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't. Yeah.
One of the things I observed of Jacob that I really loved is I think this is an encouragement to all moms, but dads as well, is he did the dad part, right? Like he would fill the cars up with gas and make sure, he was doing all the take care of parts, but he was not missing time with TJ. Yeah. He was sitting and holding him. He was doing all the things that in your mind you want to do if you have limited time with someone.
Yeah.
And Jacob really did. That feels, for better or for worse, more naturally a mother thing to do at the start of life is to sit with the baby. It's just what the mom tends to do more because she's feeding and taking care of.
Right, the nurture.
But watching Jacob do that with TJ was really inspiring to me, for him to go like that. He loves to vacuum as a person. He loves to vacuum. And he would put aside vacuuming because it was his chance to get to hold TJ and talk to TJ.
Well, I think the idea that your time is so limited.
Yes.
Even as a dad, we may be somewhat emotionally disconnected at times, but that to me would be the right outcome.
It was beautiful. Yeah, it was
be
a
with your
choice.
son.
You could tell it was a choice to
Exactly.
sit.
Jacob has a really soft heart.
Yeah.
And so he really he did stuff like they watched the Tour de France together because Jacob loves that. And we have this sweet picture of both of their eyes. This was the coolest thing about TJ. He locked in, man. Whatever was going on, if it was you holding him, his eyes locked in on you. Like they were looking deep into your soul.
Yes.
If you were reading him a book, his little eyes went like this. Mm-hmm. And we have this sweet picture of him and Jacob just both staring at the TV. Tour de France.
Oh, wow. So the Tour de France.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Sweet.
Not your typical 2-year-old show.
Or 2-month-old show.
Or that too.
Yeah.
Listen, a key part of your story is how you had to help your son Sam do this coping. So the proof is in the pudding. I mean, you did the book, you sat with Sam, you talked with Sam. Both of you did. Mm-hmm. How is Sam, and what was the process like helping him understand where TJ went?
Yeah. We got some really good advice early on to try and be as honest with him, age appropriately honest as possible. So we welcome Sam into every part of the process of TJ. We tried to explain his illness in a way that a 2-year-old could understand. And we allowed him to experience TJ's death with us as well and really say goodbye to him. And I hope that was the right thing. He's only 4. We're only 2.5 years out. Yeah. So we'll see down the road. But so far, it's been really, since TJ passed, one of the advice we've gotten is to let Sam lead in talking about grief and talking about TJ. And so we have pictures of TJ all over our house. We talk about TJ all the time, not in a forcing conversation way, but just he's part of our family. And so when Sam brings it up, we enter in with him. And sometimes we cry with him. Sometimes he just wants to see pictures and videos of him and TJ. And then, he's got like a 4-year-old boy attention span, and then he's done. And we're, off to the Legos and the trucks. So we just try to walk with him in those moments. And we talk a lot about Jesus in heaven and a lot about how God loves us. And it feels very unfair that he has to have these conversations already and that he has to ask questions about when people go to heaven. So I do tell him a lot too that like usually we get really, really old, like older than Grammy and Granddaddy, older than Grandma and Grandpa before we go to heaven, so.
I think that's really good. I think one of the downsides, even in the Christian community, is we're not able to talk about these things in a way that really soothes those aches and pains and that grief. So I take my hat off to you to say thank you for writing this.
In the back of the book, a counselor we really respect named David Thomas wrote a letter to help parents kind of process with their kids after they read. Yeah. And one of the things he taught us was be actual and factual. So even in the book, it doesn't say TJ went to heaven. It says TJ died. Yeah. Because we at times, there are going to be times where parents are really grieving and they need to connect with their child, and where did TJ go will be the conduit in between, and where they may not be able to say, our daughter died or our sister died, they can say TJ died. And it will help with that. But I'll tell you, Tatum and Jacob have done an incredible job of helping Sam process the loss of TJ. And the Lord has been very kind to our family to give us the opportunity to talk. Sam has this little picture of me and him and TJ framed on his desk. And the other day we were FaceTiming. We were in a meeting. We tend to have meetings, me and Sam. And we're just talking about something silly. And he goes, I love that picture of us. And so TJ's just a normal part.
Well, that's what
of
I
our
mean.
lives.
That's the healthiness of it. And sometimes we avoid the things that are difficult.
Yes.
It's completely understandable.
Absolutely.
But I love the idea of diving forward
Yes.
and taking the deep breath to your
Yes,
whale
that's
analogy,
right.
going
That's
down
right.
and then coming back up for oxygen.
Yes.
I think that's really the story. So thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, what an honor. Thank you guys. We're
Thanks
so
for
grateful
writing
what
this,
y'all do.
given there was not many resources out there, and we get to put this into kind of the focus on the family stable. And we do receive mail and emails and texts from people about this difficult spot. You're not alone in that. And I would only encourage you to get a hold of us. It may not be you. It may be somebody close to you that's experienced this. Get a copy of this book. We'll make it easy. And a great way to do it is just a gift of any amount. And we'll send it to you as our way of saying thank you. If you can't afford it and need it, we're going to get it to you. So we'll trust others will cover the cost of that. But what a great resource to talk to your son or daughter about the loss of a sibling. I think it's beautiful. It's well done. It's gospel-centered, which you said, Annie. So again, get in touch with us.
Yeah, donate generously as you can when you call 800-A-FAMILY or follow the links in the program description below. We've got all the details there for you to get a copy of the book, Where Did TJ Go? And by the way, boy, Jim, we've touched on such tender topics. There are undoubtedly people that don't identify specifically with this story, but they need to talk to somebody. We have a wonderful team of Christian counselors here, and they're available to have a free phone consultation with you. Our number again, 800, the letter A, and the word family. Give us a call if we can be of help. Thanks for joining us today for Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. I'm John Fuller, inviting you back as we once again help you and your family thrive in Christ.